Hashem appeared to Avram in Elone Mamre. And he was sitting at the entrance of his tent at the hottest day of the time of the day. We'll see in a moment. There's no communication between Hashem and Avram. It says he appeared to him, and he's sitting at the entrance of the tent, but there's no communication. As a result of that, Rashi cites the Chazal that what did Hashem do? Why did he come? Why did he appear to him? To pay a sick visit. That's the reason why Hashem came to him. It wasn't to communicate anything to him. That's Chazal. Because otherwise, the Torah should have mentioned some degree of communication. See Rashi. Vayir oilov levakar sacholer. Omer b'chombra chanina yom shlishi miloso hoyo. It was the third day of circumcision. Uba HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shal b'shlomo. And Hashem came to pay a sick visit to see how he's doing. Why is it important for us to identify the location in which he appeared to him? Elone Mamre, Milah. He's the one who advised him about the Milah. And because he was the one who backed Avram and encouraged him to do the Milah, therefore Hashem appeared in the portion of Mamre. That was because since he identified understanding and encouraging the Milah, which is not the case with his cohorts, his colleagues, therefore Hashem appeared in Elone Mamre. The Medrash tells us that, which of course, it's not understood on a simple level. Avram, after he was told to circumcise himself, he consulted with his three compatriots on their Eshkul Mamre. These are the three people who had gone to war with him, who had watched his provisions or his weapons when he went to war. Eliezer actually went to war with him, but they were Shomer HaKelim. They watched their various weapons that they had brought to go to war. So they were his compatriots, and he asked them, each of them, what do you think? Avram's 99 years old. Do you think it's a good idea I should circumcise myself? So one of them said, you're an old man. I think it's taking a risk. I don't think you should. The other one said, you realize that since you just vanquished the 4 kings and you killed so many of the relatives, when you're going to be in a weakened state, you're going to be vulnerable, and the relatives are coming, they're going to kill you. I don't think it's a good idea. That's the second one. Mamre says to him, he says he doesn't understand. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu just allowed you to bring about a victory. The 4 mightiest powers of the world. You vanquished them. You're worried about their relatives, and you're worried about your age. Of course you should circumcise yourself. This was Mamre's response. So because Mamre encouraged it and explained it with such definiteness, why of course he should do it, therefore, in that merit Hashem appeared in the flames of Mamre. That was the schus, that was the schar he had given him. That was the reward. Now, it's understood, the commentators explained, it was never a consideration. Avram Avinu needed any encouragement, and he was consulted whether he should do or should not do. He just wanted to see where they stood. The 3 of his compatriots, where exactly did they stand? 2 of them did not stand where they should have stood. Mamre, on the other hand, he understood it clearly. And therefore, as a result of that, he proved himself to be at that special level. And as a result of that, Hashem appeared to Avram in the plains of Mamre. That was the schar. Could have appeared to him elsewhere. Plains of Mamre, no, Torah makes it a point. Now, it's very interesting. Avram Avinu, there's a question which is asked. Avram Avinu kept the whole Torah its entirety before it was given. Every mitzvah, even Erev Tafshilin, even rabbinic laws. But yet, the mitzvah of Milah, circumcision, he didn't circumcise himself earlier. If he kept every mitzvah, why didn't he do Milah? Why didn't he do circumcision? So the answer which is given is because we say, greater is the value of a mitzvah, which one performs when he's obligated, than when he's not obligated. Since Avraham Avinu understood this is something which has to be addressed, and ultimately he understood God will eventually command him. If he wants to have that special relation with Hashem, Hashem will give them the command, the obligation to remove that foreskin. So if he would have preempted it, he would have circumcised himself earlier, it would have been a context where he wasn't obligated. And since the value of a mitzvah when you're obligated to perform has greater value, therefore Avram delayed it and waited for the moment that Hashem would command to do the mitzvah. That's the answer which is given. God la mitzvah also greater is one who's obligated to perform than one who performs in a state where he's not obligated to perform. That's why Avram delayed it. However, we had mentioned many times in the name of the Olas Ephraim, and others discuss it also, say the same principle, just as we read at the end of time, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu remove the Orlas Levavchem, Es Levav Zaracha, Orlas Levavcha, Levav Zarecha. God removed the foreskin of our hearts and the foreskin of the hearts of our children. This time of coming Mashiach, that just as there's an outer foreskin, which is an outer covering, that's only representation that there's an impurity, there's a covering, something which desensitized our feelings on our heart. And when you remove that outer foreskin, you actually open all spiritual channels that a Jew is able to have a relation with Hashem. That's the understanding. So it's called the Orla Chitzoni. When you remove the Orla Chitzoni, the outer Orla foreskin, you remove the Orla Hapnimi, the inner foreskin, the inner covering of the heart. And all channels are opened to the Jew to be able to serve Hashem. And this is the reason why, if a Jew doesn't circumcise himself, although it's a mitzvah saseh, it's being passive, the liability is koris. Every koris, every liability of spiritual excision, which is your excised from Hashem, is always being proactive. It's always a lo tasa, it's a negative commandment. But there are only two positive commandments which carry the liability of koris in a passive state. It's Milah, circumcision, and Korban Pesach. Those are the two mitzvahs. So we'll discuss Korban Pesach separately. But the Milah itself, because that is so-called the basis to having a relation with Hashem, as long as you have that foreskin, you can't have a relationship. So if that's the case, you're excised from Hashem. That's why the state of that person is koris, you cut off. So the only way you're able to have a relationship, the foreskin has to be removed. That's why the liability is koris. So Avram, since ultimately he knew he would be in a state of B'tzuva, he'd be obligated. So now if you do it too early, what is it? The Gemara talks about a situation, it's called Arvi Mohul, an Arab who's circumcised. Arvi Mohul, it's purely, or a non-Jew circumcised, it's purely cosmetic. It doesn't have this effect. Because the only time it has that effect is only if what? If it has that level, if the time is, it's like, you have a cataract. If it's ready to be taken off, then you can take it off. Otherwise, you can't take it off. Doesn't have the thickness, the membrane to take it off. Unless you're in a position that you're at a certain level of spirituality, now you're ready for real time. So when you take off the outer, it removes the inner. But if a person is not at that level, removing the outer has no effect on the inner. So Avram waited for that moment to be told that he's ready for that moment. So at the age of 99, only then was he commanded to remove, because earlier it would have been purely superficial, it would have been cosmetic, it wouldn't have had that inner effect on his heart, to be able to have open all those spiritual channels. That's the understanding.
Rabbi.
The Gemara tells us in Shabbos, in the Rebbe Lezer and Milah, the Gemara tells us that throughout history, any mitzvah which the Jews did with besimcha, even if they're alienated from Torah and mitzvahs, they always kept the mitzvah of Milah. Circumcision was always kept. Why? That number one. So the Gemara quotes a pasuk where David HaMelech says, I rejoice over your mitzvahs as if I've come upon great spoils. And the Gemara tells over a story that David HaMelech was in the bathhouse and he was naked. He was detached from all mitzvahs. He's not permitted to study Torah. Visually, he doesn't have the mezuzah. He's totally removed from everything. And then he realized that he was circumcised. When he saw that he was circumcised, which is the representation of the Bris Kodesh, he says, I rejoice over Imrosecho Kamotzi Shalom Rov. So because David, so we see that being circumcised, identifying with that as Bris Kodesh, that's the ultimate. So any mitzvah Jews did besimcha, that mitzvah will never be removed from them. And throughout history, Jews have always done the mitzvah of Milah besimcha. There's a Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas Tazria, which the Medrash tells us, although a parent is not obligated to celebrate and to make a banquet, to celebrate the bris, but yet Jews do. Why? Because they see its value. And Hashem says, and because you value it, therefore I see you special. I mean, you circumcise an 8-day-old child. It's a newborn. You're ready to start to mutilate him? No, because you understand the value of that procedure, removing that foreskin, therefore you celebrate. That's one reason. There's another answer that because they're always most nefesh. Jews always gave their lives, even though like in the time of the Romans or the time of the Greeks, there was a decree Jews should not circumcise themselves. Otherwise, they'll be put to death. Jews always circumcise themselves, even at the threat of being put to death. Now, the question is why? Why was this mitzvah so special to Jews that they were even willing to Moshe Nefesh, to put their lives on the line? The answer is, as we're saying now, because the Jews understood, you don't observe Shabbos, you don't observe Shabbos Kashrut, you don't observe dietary, whatever it is. But the Milah, if you don't remove that foreskin, that means the Orla Pnimi, the inner cover of the heart, all spiritual channels are totally shut down. You can't have a relation with Hashem. If you can't have a relation with Hashem, as a result of that, it's the equivalent almost like idolatry. Just as the idolater is removing himself from Hashem, it's a statement. I believe it's something other than it is. Identically, not circumcising yourself, you have no relevance. All the spiritual channels are totally shut down. Therefore, Jews were always most significant. This is the Gemara Shabbos. Therefore, it's similar to Avodah Zarah. And that's why the mitzvah is still prevalent among Jews, even Jews who were alienated from what? From Torah Yiddishkeit. That's the Gemara. Avram now just had the foreskin removed. Before he had it removed, he consulted with his 3 compatriots. Honor says don't do it for his reason. Eshkol says don't do it for his reason. Mamre says, what are you talking about? Of course you should do it. If Hashem just gave you the ability to vanquish the 4 mightiest kings, you're worried about your age, it's going to have a negative consequence, or you're going to be attacked because you can be vulnerable by their relatives. If Hashem's with you, you have nothing to worry about. As a result of that, but again, Mamre appreciated, understood what is the value of detaching yourself from that orla. The orla itself, as we discussed many times, that itself is the expression of the Eitz Hadas. That's the Rav Deitz Hadas. When Adam ate of Deitz, Adam was created without a foreskin. When he ate of that Eitz Hadas, the evil expressed itself through the Orla. The Orla was an expression of the Ra. Now Hashem says, now you're ready to detach yourself. Now you're going to minimize that Ra, the effect of that. And now you're going to have relevance to have that special relationship with me, which until now you couldn't have that special relationship with me. Take a look at the Orach Chaim HaKadosh over here. He learns there was no communication. Avram at this time, after the circumcision, became the Merkava. We say that the Avos HaKadosh, they were the Merkava. They were the location of the Shekhinah in this world. At this moment, when Avram removed the foreskin, he became the Merkava. That's what you find. There's no communication over here between Avram and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because at this moment, now you've removed that impurity. As a result of that, it's interesting. There's a medrash at the beginning of Achrei Mos that over there it speaks about the laws which pertain to a Kohen. A Kohen's not permitted to contaminate himself to the dead. So, but a non-Kohen is permitted. Why? So Medrash says, Moshel Ma'adav Doma, what is it analogous to? That a king has a certain person is permitted to enter into the inner sanctums of the palace because of relation. So the king says to a subject, but you realize you're only qualified to enter only if you don't expose yourself to something that will soil you. If you become soiled, then you're not eligible to come into the inner sanctums of the palace. Now, so therefore, Hashem says the Kohen who has that special, he's the fishing of Hashem. They're the ones who did not worship idolatry with the Chet Egel. They were chosen to be the Kohanim. They are the Misharsi Hashem. They are the officiants. They're able to officiate in the location of the Shekhinah. What is Tumah? What is Tumas Mes? Tumas Mes, death. Hashem says to Adam, the day you will eat of that fruit, you will be subject to death. So death is a result of the Ra, of the Eitz HaDaas being intermingled in the human being. So because that's the representation of the Ra, that's similar to the Orlam. Just as the Jew can't have a relation with Hashem if he has that foreskin, that's in general to go into the inner sanctums, which is the Azor, the Beis Hamikdash, or the Mishkan, you can have any relevance to Tumah. Because the Gemara tells us that before we did the Chet Egel, we reverted back to pre-sin of Adam, and we were meant to live eternally. After we did the Chet Egel, because it was Avodah Zorah, we reverted back to post-sin. The Ra was reinstated. So what is Avodah Zorah? Avodah Zorah is directly connected to what that foreskin represents. That's the evil in the Bria. That is the evil. Therefore, the Kohen being the officiant, and the Kohen, Levi, was not involved in the Avodah Zorah. The only reason why they reverted back is because they're part of Klal Yisrael. But in terms of themselves independently, they shouldn't have reverted back. So the Kohen who was chosen to be the ultimate, he cannot be and have any level of association with that representation of Tumah, which is only Tumas Mes. Tumas Mes. A Kohen, he could contaminate himself to a sheretz. There's no Torah violation. But the dead, only to his 7 closest relatives. But anyone else, he's not permitted. And the Kohen Gadol was the ultimate, even to his 7 closest relatives, he's not permitted to contaminate himself. Of course, contamination is a representation of that. So Mamre, who advised him on the Milah, understanding what that Milah represents, the Orla represents, he said, of course do it. What's the question? Because he had understanding what it means to have a relation with Hashem. Here in an uncircumcised state, Hashem came and assisted you to vanquish the 4 mightiest kings. Now that you're circumcised and you have that special relationship, you're concerned. It's with a Kal V'chomer. Of course, you shouldn't have to be concerned. Therefore, Mamre merited, and that's why at this point, Avram became the Merkava. He became the Merkava because until now there was this impediment. There was the foreskin. Once that's removed, now he could become the Merkava. And it's interesting. Avram was not qualified to father Yitzchak until he was circumcised. He wasn't qualified. Because again, to be able to father the patriarch of Klal Yisrael, who's going to father the patriarch, who's going to father the Jewish people, Yaakov, you can't have any level of association to that Ra. You can only establish the eternal people if you're no longer related to that Ra. So even though you're born with a foreskin, it has to be removed. We find the Chazal tell us there were a number of people that were born without a foreskin. Who was the first one? Yaakov Avinu was born without a foreskin. So Yaakov Avinu in himself was similar, had a semblance of Adam Kodem Achet. He had no foreskin. Yosef had no foreskin. Yosef was what? Was Zivi Kunim, Shel Aviv. He had all the potential of his father. Yosef, Ben Zikunim. He was the one. Why? He was the one who was going to prepare the exile for Klal Yisrael to become the eternal people. Moshe had no foreskin. Moshe was born without a foreskin. Moshe was like a miracle child. David HaMelech had no foreskin. The most special Jews in the history of Klal Yisrael had no foreskins. Because what is the foreskin a representation of? Even though the mitzvah is to remove it, and it has that effect that we remove the Orla Pnimi, but factually speaking, to be born without it is a confirmation that you don't have that impurity, that blockage of the heart. You're naturally. The only reason why a person born without a foreskin needs Hatovas Dam Bris is there's a question, there may be Orla Kvusha. There may be a membrane that we don't see, but Chazal tells us with absoluteness that these people, even the Orla Kvusha didn't have. There was no trace of that impurity of the chet of Adam Rishon. Therefore, it didn't have to be removed. Therefore, Hashem appeared to Avram at this moment to become the Merkava because he no longer had that representation of the Ra, and Mamre, because he valued that, therefore Mamre merited that Hashem should appear to Avram in his portion. The Torah tells us he sat Pesach oil kechom hayom. At the entrance of the tent, it was the hottest time of the day. Pesach oil, liros mish ove v'shov, yachdisim bebeso. He was looking for wayfarers. Avram, he was involved in achnosis orchim hospitality continuously, and because there was such intense heat, and it was the hottest day of existence, therefore there were no wayfarers. Hashem took the sun out of its sheath, not to bother him with orchim, with guests. Why? He's 99 years old. He had to recover from the circumcision. And because Avram was pained that there were no orchim coming, she brought angels in human form. The angels were meant to come, as we read. Each one had a specific mission: to heal him, to tell Sarah she was going to have a child. Each one had its mission. But normally they would have come as angels, but they came as in human form to satisfy Avram because he had no one to host. So he thought they were humans. Initially, he didn't realize they were angels. So the whole question afterwards, did he come to that relative realization? But this moment didn't. So because so we discuss this every year, Alan. What was he mitzdayer? Was the money burning a hole in his pocket? I have this inventory of food, it's going to get spoiled. What exactly what was he mitzdayer over? Right? That's the question. And he was pained. Here Hashem wanted him to have a respite, to convalesce. But now that he sees that he's in pain, so therefore he's going to satisfy that by allowing Orchim to go. And who are they doing? Malochim. In human form, angels. What exactly was the pain? So I explained in the past. What was Avram's? Avram chose Hachnosis Orchim, which is one of the attributes of Hashem Chesed, and he hosted people continuously. But what was the emphasis? What was the thrust of his Hachnosis Orchim? What was the objective? And so the Medrash tells us there was no person who ever came into Avram's tent who came in as a pagan and did not leave as a monotheist. The discussion was always to refute paganism, and the person was always convinced that from now going forward, there's only a creator, there's divine providence, and there's no other power other than God. Okay? If Avram now has no one to host, what does that mean? That means out there in the world, people who normally he could have engaged with, they're remaining pagans. Here it's Hashem's world. The world's of God's, and people believe it's somebody else's world. You know, somebody gives you a gift. I send a messenger to give you a very valuable gift, an agent, and you believe the agent is the one who's giving you the gift. and you give thanks to the agent rather than to the benefactor. It's a disgrace. This man's only delivering the gift. The endowment is not emanating from him. So paganism is the ultimate chil Hashem. We're offering our homage to the deities, worshiping them, when God is the creator and God is the one who wills it continuously. Avram was pained for chil Hashem because every moment he's not able to engage in achnosis orchim, the chil Hashem continues. He's not able to chip away at it. Therefore, Hashem, because he reached that level of pain for that reason, Hashem satisfied him by sending angels in human form that he should believe that what? They have to be hosted. And originally we see, he believed they may have been idolaters. He gave them water to wash their feet. So Rashi, we're going to have them more later in Bava Metzia, because maybe they worshiped the sand. And he didn't want that idolatry to be tracked into his house. So here, this was the ultimate opportunity for him. That's why we sing Kechom Hayom. This famous question of the Chavetz Chaim that we find in a moment when he sees them, he runs towards them. We'll just read it. Vayiseina Vayar. He lifts his eyes and he sees Vine Shlosha Noshim Nitzav Molov. 3 men are standing opposite him. Vayar. And then it says Vayar a second time. One is visual, the other one is realization. Vayoratz Likrosam, hear this, he's 99 years old, 3rd day of his circumcision. He runs towards them. With a level of what? Pesach oil. He ran from the entrance of his tent, and then he prostrates himself to these people. Who is Avram at this point? First, he's 99 years old. He's a man who vanquished the 4 mightiest powers in the world. He has a level of wealth, which is, from the time he left Egypt, tremendous wealth. The land Canaan didn't have enough grazing land to accommodate his flocks and Lot's flocks. And he's prostrating himself before 3 wayfarers coming down the road. Right? What's Ishtach? It's not his bowing at the waist. This is full prostration. I'm dust at your feet. This is the way Avram did Hachnosis Orchim. Why? I mean, here is the Si Elokim. He's the ultimate human being in every sense of the word. And yet he himself, he rushes towards them. Go a little slower. See, it's the reason why I give him the mitzvahs. He can't allow the opportunity if he's pained, and now he sees the opportunity, he's rushing to it. Okay, what's this prostration all about? Could you imagine? Mark wants to hire somebody to be his assistant, and everybody's vying to get him. Mark goes to him, and he comes to his office for an interview, and Mark prostrates himself in front of this guy because he wants him. You tell me, is that possible? What's this prostration all about? I'm dust at your feet. Yeah, you're the rainmaker. What's going on over here? Now, I had said in the past that if I make a suggestion or want to offer you an idea which I want you to accept, what goes through the person's mind very often? If I don't know who you are, and you're not necessarily credible in my eyes, and I don't know what your intent is, subconsciously, you want to buy time, or you have every moment, there are reasons you're trying to deflect whatever that person is trying to influence you with whatever he's presenting to you. That's just natural. Unless it's like taking candy from a baby, you're gullible. But any person is a person of standing, of some position. He's concerned, and all of a sudden you can introduce an alien concept to me. I'll give you an example. These people come, all of a sudden Avram is whining and dining them. He's prostrating himself. And they say, this doesn't make sense. What's the answer? He wants something from us. He wants something from us. The moment that suspicion is there, you want something from us, you set up every guard and you walk very slowly. And you put everything under the microscope. Is this in my best interest? Maybe he wants to somehow ensnare us. He wants to persuade us to something which we may want and not want. And that's what all these overtures are all about. He sends the car for you. He wines and dines you in the restaurant. He'll give you this, give you that. People, there are no free rides in this world. So why is Avram doing all this? So Avram understood that every reason why a person would think why he's trying to accommodate him has nothing to do because Avram wants anything from them. Why? Is Avram concerned for his safety? So he's trying to gather compatriots. Avram just defeated the four mightiest kings. Does Avram need wealth? Avram needs no wealth. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. Does Avram need renown? He's Avram Goyim. He needs no renown. So why is Avram running towards them and prostrating himself? There's only one reason. He sees us. He really sees that we're really special. And because he sees we're special, that's why he wants to accommodate us. So if a person feels that he's being valued because he's special, and you have no distrust, then you're willing to listen and you become an open book. And you'll embrace whatever is presented as long as you don't see it's not in your best interest. That was Avram's approach to every interaction of hospitality whenever he hosted anyone. That was the idea, conceptually speaking. He had it psychologically worked out. Now, I once asked the question that there's a mitzvah kibbut avein. Person has a phenomenal upbringing. His parents are dedicated to him. There's nothing they did not deny him at every level. Love, education, material, everything under the sun was provided. And now you have a third party who does 1/10,000th of what a parent does. The sense of indebtedness, the way you feel, is graded to your parents or to this third party. That third party did many special things. Your father calls you up 3:00 in the morning. He said, Dad, is there a problem? Could you come over? You can't wait till tomorrow morning. That other person who did 10,000th of what your parent did calls you 3 in the morning. You don't ask, could it wait till tomorrow morning? If he's calling you, go. And even if he asks you many things, you feel indebted to that person. But the sense of indebtedness to a parent, a person doesn't feel. Why did the stranger person does feel the indebtedness? And to one's own parent, you don't have that same sense of indebtedness. Right? We discussed this in the past. What is the core of a human being to really motivate him in life? What drives a person? What drives a person is his ego. You stroke a person's ego, you could have him eating out of your hand if you know how to do it. As they say, he could play him like a fiddle. The essence of a person is his ego. A parent who raises a child in the most special way, does the child feel because I'm special or because I'm the child of my parent? When a stranger treats you specially, which nobody's treated like this man is treating you, he's a stranger. Why is he doing it? Other than that he realizes he wants to do something for you. When you feel it's being done for you, then you're ignited. Then it resonates and you feel he put you on top on that pedestal. A child doesn't feel he's on a pedestal. He may feel he's special, but the question is, well, why did my parent do it? Because you're my child. It's not because I myself, if you have a number of children and one parent treats one child differently than the others, more special, maybe he has a sense of that. But if there's only one child or all children are treated equally, and all special equally, we're all my parents' children. That's what we're treated. It's not the ego. But the other person, it's because it's you. When it's ego, it's the ultimate. Avram understands if a man of Avram's stature, where he has no ulterior motive, what could his ulterior motive be? He needs them for nothing. And yet he prostrates himself. That means he recognized there's something special in them, which they themselves don't even realize how special they are. If that's the case, he's touching them in an area where they're ready to embrace whatever he has to offer, because they realize that this man appreciates and understands who they are. That we find that every aspect of hospitality, slate, which Avram offered to the Malachim, has eternal value and affected the future of Klal Yisrael in terms of our spiritual development. That he said they should rest under the shade of the tree, we merited on the Akovot, the clouds of glory. That he offered the water, we merited the Bris of Miriam, the wellspring that traveled with us for 40 years. And that we merited the man, which was essential to our spiritual development, was because he offered it the bread, the morsel of bread. Now, why is the Torah so focused on this Achnos Orchim? Avram is 99. His whole life he was doing Achnos Orchim. Hospitality, that was his forte. That was his full involvement. Why now all of a sudden? And why this hospitality has this special value? Until now, it didn't have that special value. So the Chofetz Chaim writes that who did he host? He hosted angels. He didn't realize they were angels. But these are one of kind of guests. So the beneficiaries of his Achnosos Orchim were the ultimate people. Well, because they came in human form. So he did accommodate their physical needs. The Medrash says that they were beneficiaries of his hospitality. Now, why did he merit such special guests? When you host the king, you host the prince, you're more worthy. The king has great appreciation because you're hosting the prince. Why did he merit to host the prince, so to say? This was the reward for all the Achnos Orchim he had done his whole life. This is the big payoff. The big payoff is now you have the ultimate guests, Achnos Orchim, angels. And because he had angels, therefore the ramifications of his Achnos Orchim, the consequence was the ultimate, the Ani Akovod, the Bris Miriam, and the Mon.
Rabbi, could you say